Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL. Coming up on the program, Susan Crabtree will be with us this hour at 4:30. We talked to her about all of the security preparations for the inauguration next week. Will law enforcement, state, federal, and otherwise, be able to secure this thing, keep everybody safe? That's critical. Susan's been digging in. She'll share her findings ahead. Thomas Catenacci joins us at 5 o'clock from the Washington Free Beacon. We talk about California, those wildfires still underway. Dozens of people have lost their lives in those awful fires, and many Californians are now dealing with the consequences of the awful leadership that hangs above them. What's going to happen next? We'll get into that with Tomcat. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Bittersweet moment today as Karinge Jean-Pierre says goodbye to the lectern at the White House. They call it the podium. And it was her last, for whatever reason, it was her very last press briefing today. One hopes, actually, that it's her last press briefing, that they don't have some other reason why she'll have to show up in front of a microphone in the week ahead. And it was, I don't know, it was just as incoherent as every other press briefing she's done. She today duplicated the very same mindless gaffe that Joe Biden made on the debate stage when he said against President Trump that we beat Medicare. Do you remember this moment? President Biden saying this.
Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
Yeah. Yes, that moment actually happened. Here's Karinge today, who I believe is at least half his age.
But as you asked me about this particular question, look, we were able to beat Medicare. That is something that this president was able to do.
You can't be serious. I guess the obvious follow-up is, what's your excuse? You know? Because Biden is deeply senile at this point. It's, it is associated with age, for sure. He has it worse than most. What's your excuse, Karinge? What the heck's going on? We were able to beat Medicare. We finally beat Medicare, says the White House press secretary. Either that or maybe the way she handles her job is like, if Biden says it, I just repeat it. She's just operating very slowly because that happened, I think, what was it, June of last year? And now she's saying it on her very final press briefing, which went great. It went great today. Good job, Karinge. She also mixed it up with Peter Doocy today. Take a listen. This is the last exchange we may ever get between Peter Doocy and Karinge Jean-Pierre.
Hi.
Thank you, Karinge. If I don't see you again in the briefing, thank you for always. You could have stopped taking the hard questions years ago, and you didn't. So we appreciate that.
Oh, I love that. I love that little the press in the room catching some strays. The other television networks catching some strays from Peter Doocy. He straight up says, "Thanks for calling on me because otherwise you're not getting any tough questions." Good for him.
In the briefing, thank you for always. You could have stopped taking the hard questions years ago, and you didn't. So we appreciate that.
Over 2 years, my friend. This is let's say one last dance, right? I don't know how I'm going to fill my dance card now. How will I fill that void without?
That's a Biden era reference. A dance card.
You.
You tell me. You tell me. So
Start some rumors in here, I guess.
He's getting red, too. Look at that.
I don't even know what they're laughing about.
So, a week from now, it's all over.
Yes.
Between next Monday and 2028.
2028?
Who's the leader of the Democratic Party?
Oh, my goodness. Wow. That is for people much smarter than I to make that assessment, that decision.
Well, good news, everybody. We all get to decide who the leader of the Democrat Party is. All of us together. We get to do that. You just heard it from Karinge. She said, it's only up to people who are smarter than me. So that means all of us. We can all do it together. Now taking your calls, 888-630-9625. We'll get to pick who the new leader of the Democrats is at Karinge's invitation. So thank you for that. It is a good question, though. Who's the leader of this party?
Harder than I to make that assessment, that decision. Obviously, voters will decide. That is not something for me to decide. I could say right now, in this moment, in this room.
They'll use democracy, as she always says, to make that decision.
As I'm looking at the clock as it's counting down, because we have to leave shortly.
She's describing literally the things she looks at. She's Brick from Anchorman. I love lamp. She looks around the room. And she's literally just describing, as I'm staring at a clock, as the numbers tick down, as I'm leaving, as I'm standing here behind a microphone. What's happening in your mind right now? Do you have to say breathe in, breathe out throughout the day, or is that something you can do without saying the words?
That is not something for me to decide. I could say right now, in this moment, in this room.
In this moment.
As I'm looking at the clock as it's counting down, because we have to leave shortly, you have the President Joe Biden, who is obviously the president and the leader of the Democratic Party. I do not have I cannot predict the future, so that is not something that I'm going to do from here.
Oh.
I love carpet. I love desk.
Brick, are you just looking at things in the office and saying that you love them?
I love lamp.
Do you really love the lamp, or are you just saying it because you saw it?
I love lamp.
How did I miss this reference, by the way, for so long? Karinge is the Brick of the deal of the White House. She just looking around the room, just trying to make it moment to moment, hoping nobody notices that she has no idea what she's doing. Karinge, where did you get a hand grenade? I think I saw Karinge throw a trident. Yeah. So her last press briefing today went about as well as all the other ones. And she declared today that we were able to beat Medicare. So, we bid you farewell. We no idea at this point what she's going to do as she leaves. We've got some hunches, and they consist of left-wing cable networks with no standards whatsoever saying, yeah, come on in, join us. The water is fine. Did you see that Rachel Maddow is going to go back on every single night of the week now? Well, every weeknight. For the first 100 days. She has, what blackmail does she have over that company at MSNBC? Do you know how much money that she makes? She's rumored to make something like $25 or $30 million a year. She negotiated a contract, quite famously, during the Biden administration, where she doesn't go on television, but for one day a week, she occasionally appears on special programming, like, big night, State of the Union, presidential election. And beyond that, she spends the rest of the time fly fishing or whatever it is that she's doing. And she gets paid like $30 million. First, it's just an unbelievable round of applause. That's an amazing arrangement that she has. And one would assume part of the reason that MSNBC was willing to agree to that, maybe she does have blackmail. Maybe that's the explanation. But part of the reason is they assume that CNN or some other competitor network will take her, and therefore whatever audience that she attracts to that network is going to go with her. And then it's the end for MSNBC at that point. But are their ratings really even big enough to justify those types of expenditures? So she's going to do the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. That's the report today. The New York Times' Michael Grinbaum reporting this. She will go on the air every weeknight for the first 100 days of his presidency. How did she use that post before? How did she use that job before? Oh, I don't know. She advanced the entire Trump-Russia collusion hoax to her fevered fans every night. She would, get out the yarn board and start drawing connections that don't even exist and convincing everybody that it was the gospel truth. Her and her crack team of journalists have been working all day to bring you this pressing information that turned out to be completely false and untrue. And then she gets this huge, huge salary. Again, God bless her for it. And now she's got the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. She's going to really give it to him. of course, speaks to a couple things, but one of them is MSNBC's complete desperation. Their complete desperation. They have no idea what to do. To whatever extent they still had an audience, that audience just had their entire worldview ripped out from underneath them in the election. They were, maybe some percentage of them are looking and going, wait a second. This world doesn't reflect what you've been saying at all. At all. Do you ever go back and watch election night coverage from 2016 and 2024 especially? Do you ever go back and look at like the supercuts of those? MSNBC's fun to do. Because as the night starts, it's all cheerful and optimistic. And as the night wears on, it becomes more and more upset and bitter. And then by the end of the night, they're attacking the voters. It's the best. Especially Joy Reid. Who they kept her on the desk. They kept her on this important election desk during their national coverage. And by the end of it, she's just attacking the voters and how awful this country is. And we need to reckon with. Yeah. Yeah, so they're looking for a way out. So MSNBC's plan is to try and make the first 100 days of the Trump administration as miserable as they can possibly make it. Put Rachel Maddow in front of them every single night, have her spread any conspiracy theory they think can get a viewer, and to go with that and just accelerate as hard as they can. So has the left learned any lessons, you think, from the election? No, not really. Not really. There have been elements of the left, I mean, like the John Fettermans of the world, but that took a catastrophic brain event for him to be able to wake up from the left spell. And they're mad at him now. He just met with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and apparently the meeting went very well. The two had a lot of nice things to say about each other and how it was a good meeting and it was productive. And I'm watching lefties today online. They're angry. Are you seeing this, Corey? They're angry that Fetterman did that. Why would you do that? Why would you dignify Trump with a meeting? Why would you do that? Well, he's the president of the United States, and bonus, he just won the state of Pennsylvania. So if you're John Fetterman, if you are a Pennsylvania senator, prioritizing what your voters want, kind of the job, actually. Kind of the job. Meeting with the president of the United States, perfectly fine. By the way, when did Joe Biden invite Ted Cruz into the White House to meet with him? When did Joe Biden invite any of these guys to come by? Mike Lee, Rand Paul. When did he extend invitations to Republican senators, say, hey, stop on by, let's talk, let's figure out whether or not there's something we can do in common, whether our voters have any shared interests that we can pursue? No, it was nothing like that. Democrats couldn't meet with Biden. That's what the Biden presidency was. You had Democrats complaining that a president in a vegetative state wasn't taking meetings and that the staff around him refused to let him meet with anybody. So Trump meets with everyone. Biden met with no one, nobody. And the left is angry that Trump is having these meetings. They were angry that Obama was treating Trump nicely at Jimmy Carter's funeral. I don't think lessons are being learned. And that's and in some ways, there's two lessons for me from that. One, it's disappointing because it means that the same divisiveness that they have been sowing is here to stay, and so, to some extent. But the upside is I don't think that voters are as taken by the left's arguments anymore as they used to be. That the willing audience for that divisiveness is dwindling. And that people don't believe it. They look at Democrats and they think of them as like people like Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom and Joe Biden. Communities burning down. Frivolous nonsense being prioritized. Tampons in men's rooms? Yeah, it's time for that to end. It's time for that to end. And so, again, if I draw any lessons from it, one is that there are dead enders on the left who are going to stick with the same stupid program they've always been on, no matter what. And two, fewer people give a crap. Fewer people are even bothering themselves with what the left says. Yeah, you've cried wolf one too many times. All right, let's go to the phones. Chandler calling in from Bethesda now, line 4. Chandler, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Well, you gave me a lot to think about when I was waiting to talk to you, but I'm going to tell you what I was originally going to say, and that is there was such a uproar over Pete Hegseth's tattoo.
Yes.
that I think it got him tossed out of the National Guard. Yet these idiots don't realize that same tattoo, a.k.a. the Jerusalem Cross, was the cover of Jimmy Carter's funeral program, and it's also in the ground or on the floor of the National Cathedral.
Yes, well, I knew the latter point. I saw the former. I was a little confused because I saw pictures of the program, and it looked like there were different versions of it. I wasn't sure if some of that was photoshopped. But you're definitely right about the Jerusalem cross on the ground, literally under his casket, which is, of course, on the altar of the National Cathedral. And normal people everywhere say, well, that's a perfectly respectable symbol to have in a Christian church. And abnormal people everywhere say that's a symbol of extremism. So I think the left has to reject Jimmy Carter now, don't you think, Chandler?
I agree 100%. And before you let me go, I just want to say, when our founding fathers created the government and everything about it, you've got the who's the Democrat who's come to his senses?
John Fetterman.
Yes. Yeah. But that is, it was supposed to be do what is good for the country.
Yeah.
Don't follow what you think or what you need or what you want. It was supposed to be about we the people.
Yes.
And Fetterman is actually practicing the way I feel like he's practicing the way that the government was actually set up to be, and when you hear these other Democrats say, no to everything, they just a blanket veto stamp or a no stamp because it's from the conservative side of the aisle.
Yep.
That just shows you where's that tolerance and that love and that they always profess to have. And I've yet to see it anywhere.
No, that's right. We have a ruling class who has contempt for everybody else, and it really shows. And to your point, Chandler, even in Political Science 101, they teach about elected members of Congress, elected officials. There's a difference between what we call a delegate and a trustee. A delegate is someone who's supposed to execute the vision of the voters. The trustee is somebody who the voters pick and they say, hey, we trust you to handle this. The problem is in Washington, we don't even have trustees. We have distrustees. We just can't trust them. We need people who represent us, don't we? Like, it's nice to see that, even if you get just a little bit of it. A little bit of it. Hey, coming up on the program, Susan Crabtree talks about the security concerns next week at the inauguration. Good afternoon to you. It's 4:36 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up from the Washington Free Beacon, Thomas Catanacci joins us. We'll talk to him about the wildfires in California and the mess that those American citizens are not just in right now, but will be in as they try and deal with that government to get back up and running. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
More than 30 miles of anti-scale fence will be used for the inauguration, more than any other NSSE ever before. The Secret Service's comprehensive security plan will continue to use drones as part of our protective posture. Do not be alarmed if you see these assets during the inauguration or in training in the days ahead. The Secret Service will bring agents and other specialists from field offices across the country to provide a full slate of visible and invisible security measures. We work side by side with our partners throughout the process as everyone plays an equal part in safeguarding this event.
That's Matt McCool, with an awesome name, who is a special agent in charge with the United States Secret Service, indicating that this will be a very secure event next week. One hopes. They have also indicated today that they're expecting some 4,000 police officers from across the country to be joining in on the efforts to secure this very important event. For more on what we can expect next week and what questions remain, Susan Crabtree is here. She's a Real Clear Politics White House and national political correspondent who has paid a lot of attention to the activities of the United States Secret Service. Susan, good to have you back with us.
It's great to be on with you again.
This is a big event. Obviously, this is the big one. How concerned are your sources about the security of it?
So they're not as concerned as you might think. I know there has been some talk about the threat from drones with all these drone fleets that are still unexplained by the Biden administration across the eastern seaboard and other places around the country. But the Secret Service agents I talked to said that DC has long had a pretty bold and robust drone mitigation system in place, and they truly believe that that's not going to be a problem. So I know Dan Bongino and others have been expressing concerns and said even that he didn't think Donald Trump should have a formal inauguration. He should forego it, just get signed in. But that's not what I'm hearing from the agents. They feel confident in that process. What they're very concerned about are ongoing DEI issues that they worry that could play out during the inauguration. For instance, one particular agent recently told me that in 2008 there was a ceremonial contingent of agents that were junior agents and they were selected based on their skin color and gender to follow along Obama's motorcade, and that the real agents that protected Obama were on the innermost ring of the president after he was sworn in and made that ceremonial inauguration route with the motorcade. But there were other agents that are positions inside that are more senior trained, but that they worry that could happen again because, and hopefully not after the assassination attempts where DEI was heavily criticized. So that was one area of deep concern.
If I could, I want to dwell on that for a moment so I understand it. So in 2008, if I understand you correctly, the visible presence of many of the Secret Service agents was populated with people on the basis of their looks, as in their gender and their skin color, rather than whether or not they were the best qualified to protect the president?
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, there was still an innermost ring that were inside the motorcade and right outside the president's motorcade. But if you noticed, if you go back and look at the footage, a lot of the agents, and I'm hearing this from a person who was deeply involved in that inauguration planning. So there's concern that could happen again.
Yes.
And certainly that hopefully it will not happen again because the leadership there's so much concern about DEI even in the fires out in LA too, that they're playing a role. It's getting a lot of negative publicity since the assassination attempts. But that is just one area of concern. The other is, and I can go into, is training of the other participating agencies, mainly Homeland Security investigative agents, their level of training that are working with the Secret Service. And Matt McCool, as you mentioned, the agent in charge of the Washington field office, he mentioned there was going to be 25,000 different military and law enforcement and other federal agents that were involved in helping supplement the Secret Service's role that day.
Yes.
And some of these are Homeland Security investigative agents, and we know from Butler that there was a large contingent of those agents, and they weren't trained at all. They only had a glitchy 2-hour online training, and they complained that they didn't feel prepared, and the Secret Service agents didn't feel like they were prepared. So there's concern about that. They're not so much concerned about the military. I asked that question, but no, we're not concerned about the military. We're concerned about other federal agents that are supplementing. And they are deeply concerned about the level of exhaustion of all agents and uniform division officers because of this frenetic pace that they've been involved in weeks for months. Since the campaign for the entire year.
Yes.
But obviously since the height of that campaign in the last few months.
In today's briefing, as all of these various law enforcement agencies were describing what they're doing, they were saying that these special national security events, they've had a lot lately to include this January 6th. They turned that into kind of an up-armored electoral event at the Capitol. The Jimmy Carter funeral, which we saw just take place, required it was treated as a national security event with a massive police presence. And there, of course, the inauguration will be the biggest of them all out of those three. You're dealing with a workforce that is being asked to work a lot of hours and to do a lot. And that includes, as I understand it, a smaller personnel strength. They've all lost employees through the years, making this job all the harder.
Absolutely. And I'll have a exclusive internal email from the Secret Service out on my X.com account pretty soon after this interview. But the Secret Service agent shared this with me that that they are going to be, there's no end in sight either. They're offering a lot of bonuses for retention for Secret Service agents and calling back other agents as well, previous agents, to try to beef up their numbers and improve morale and the exhaustion level. But there is an email that was circulated from a Secret Service boss in the field operation. It gave a manpower update just on Friday, and they're saying that, we appreciate all your work. We really appreciate it, but, hang in there because it's not going to end. And was met with a lot of sighs and these tired eyes. And, people criticize, well, this is what you signed up for. Well, actually, the numbers have been extremely, there are a lot of agents, senior agents heading for the door after the assassination attempt. And they're just they're on their way to retirement. If they have the 20 years in that are required, a lot of them are beating an exodus for the door.
Mm-hmm. Was there any recruiting impact after the assassination attempt last year? Are you aware of whether or not young people who are interested in this line of work started volunteering as a result of all of this? Have they seen any impact since the election itself? In other words, President Trump wins the election. Has that led to any change in recruitment?
On the recruitment front, Ron Rowe, the acting director, has claimed that these retention and bonuses and also just offering bonuses for people to come on has improved things. He testified before the Senate that day, or it was Congress, before the same day that he had that terrible outburst when he was called on the carpet for a photo op on 9/11.
Yep.
But they haven't gotten back to me on the retention issues and recruitment issues on my questions. The Secret Service hasn't. They do get back to me on some of them, so that always worries me a little bit. But there's no doubt that they're being stretched extremely thin, and this email that I'm about to put out tells them that they just cannot believe they're being asked to, because of all the current administration of the big Trump family, they're going to have to be stretched even thinner.
Yes.
They're saying, can we please get rid of some of these people like John Bolton that we have to cover? We still have to cover now. Yeah. John Bolton there was a threat against John Bolton from Iran that the FBI thwarted a couple of years ago. So there is a rationale for keeping John Bolton.
I didn't know he still has Secret Service protection to this very day, though.
Yes, he does.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And I have a list of the people who have it.
Okay. So as far as inaugurations go, what do law enforcement officials think about this one as they compare it to others in the past? It seemed to me that it kind of sounded like they consider this the most fraught inauguration in a long time in terms of the threat environment and the work that it's going to take to protect certainly all of the people who are there. They're expecting about right now 250,000. I saw 250,000 ticketed seats at the inauguration. That's a lot of people, 250,000 people with tickets. And you mentioned 25,000 law enforcement officials. My basic napkin math means one cop for every 10 civilians. And then, of course, you got to, most importantly, I guess, protect the President of the United States. How does this compare to past inaugurations?
I don't remember. I covered Trump's first presidential inauguration. Of course, there was all the talk afterwards with Sean Spicer about the crowd size, how it compared to Obama's. This is supposed to be 250,000. It's supposed to be the largest, and they are concerned that there was the U.S. Capitol Police Chief Tom Manger said at that press conference that we need to be really concerned about the lone wolves, basically lone actors that could pose a threat. And the FBI said we don't have any credible evidence of any threat that we're tracking right now, which is interesting because you would think there were so many threats over the campaign season from Iran and others that how do they just disappear? So the FBI is.
Well, also,
can we trust the FBI on
also, that was the pattern of events before the New Orleans terrorist attack, which is the FBI says they had no knowledge of him conducting something like that, and then he became a lone actor who killed a lot of people.
That's right. I feel like Matt McCool, the the Secret Service agent at that press conference, the boss of the field office, was kind of playing it cool. He was trying to. Reporters asked exactly that question. How does this compare with other years? And he said, it's a higher security threat. He stated that, but then he said we have the most robust security apparatus ever, and we've had 5 big special national security events, NSSCs, as known in the Secret Service parlance, this year that we've been able to protect without serious problems. So in the Washington D.C. area, certainly the Washington D.C. Law enforcement and Secret Service are the most experienced to deal with these type of huge events. But we did hear from the U.S. Capitol Police Chief that there was 2 lone actors that are trying to disrupt the Jimmy Carter funeral, and one of them had a machete and then some other kind of knife, and one of them set his car on fire near the Capitol. So, those events are more unpredictable, as we saw with New Orleans, and certainly, I think Secret Service. If you read between the lines of what he was saying, they were saying the threat is much higher this year than other years.
Lastly, and I know, Susan, you've got some news to break, so I'll let you do that in a moment. I just wanted to ask, I've been meaning to ask you this question. There were 2 very well-publicized assassination attempts on President Trump last year, including one in which he was hit in the head. That's when Thomas Crooks opened fire in Butler, Pennsylvania, July 13th. But also there was that attack by that dude Ryan Ruth down in Florida. A congressional report would later indicate that the Secret Service agent who saw that guy in the tree line wasn't actually at a great distance from him, but instead he was 5 feet away and fired 6 shots and missed every one. That was the congressional report. Is that your understanding? Is that when you talk to Secret Service sources, do they corroborate that claim? This guy was 5 feet away, fired 6 shots, and missed all of them?
Yes, they are ridiculing that agent, although the agent deserves some commendation because he's the one who stopped the incident from happening if it was going to happen. So, but yes, the commentary that I've been seeing from the Secret Service sources are saying that the fact that he missed all of those shots is not a good indication of their training levels, and the fact that they, when it comes to shooting, they have drastically reduced the amount of training going out to the range and shooting training that these Secret Service agents must undergo on a regular basis. I think it used to be once a month, and it's not. It's once every. I can't remember, but I have the sources that can explain that to me. They have complained, and this even before that incident, they complained that they were not training as much. They're not doing as much training, and the way it was described to me is that they're just stretched too thin. They can't spend the time to do the training because the number of Secret Service agents has been reduced, and they're not prioritizing that.
It's an amazing story. I'm so glad that you're there to always dig into all of this. It really helps us understand it. Thank you very much. Susan Crabtree with Real Clear Politics. Nice to talk to you as always.
Oh, thank you so much for your interest. Thanks,
Of course. It's 4:52 now. All right, I've got Dan's calling in from Frederick, wants to make a point about that Secret Service agent who did stop the attack on President Trump in Florida. Line 3. Dan, good afternoon. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Vince. Love your show. I just wanted to say I know that area very well, been by it hundreds of times. The foliage is so thick. You could have a luxury golf course on one side and a junkyard on the other side. You wouldn't know the difference. When you're inside the golf course, you don't want to see like a 8-foot, chain link fence.
Right.
You can, 18 inches in, you're hidden. You can't see. So the guy probably saw just a hand or something, or couldn't see the whole person, but just saw a glimpse of the person. So he's firing blindly through a fence and through a whole bunch of shrubbery, and not really, shooting at a whole body.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point.
It's not that accurate anyway.
Well, they say it was 5 feet though. That's pretty damn close. But your point is very well taken. I can't assume anything. I'm just very curious about how all that went down. 5 feet, 6 shots, every one of them missed. And Susan Crabtree tells me that that poor guy's been subjected to a bunch of mockery. But she is right to bring up that training is always so very important, and that there's been too little of it these days. Let's get back to that. Focus on the core competencies, like killing the bad guys. It's 4:58.